is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Andy Kennedy joins us right now. A week ago, celebrating a huge win in Gainesville over the Gators. Andy, thanks for the time. I know it's always tough to come off of a loss, but the Rebels have certainly been on a roll lately, so you can certainly take solace in positioning yourself for March.
Well, thanks, Paul. It was quite a week for us. We experienced both ends of the spectrum, hitting a last-second shot to win in Gator Alley and then turn around and lose a heartbreaker on a last possession in your own building against a very good Arkansas team. But such is life in the SEC grind. Yeah,
in terms of just dealing with that, I mean, it was the first time, in over, I think, 15 years, I can't remember the exact number, that Ole Miss had swept Florida. Did any of that carry over, or do you think it was just playing a really good team at home and just dealing with a totally different set of circumstances?
Yeah, I think Arkansas is really good. I think that was the determining factor, and they played well. We had that Thursday-Saturday swing, which is never easy. It made it a little bit better simply because we were feeling good having survived the Gators and coming home, having won 6 in a row. We had a great crowd, a lot of energy in the building, and it was a heavyweight battle, toe-to-toe against a really good team. We took a big shot early. Arkansas jumped on us. Our guys responded. We were up 4 or 5 late. Just could not come up with a big stop. And I told my team after the game and after reviewing the tape, I don't think it was a situation where we lost the game. I thought, quite frankly, Arkansas won it.
You've got some games at home coming up, including one against Mississippi State, and then you're on the road. Really a fairly tough schedule. Tennessee and Georgia as well. Then you're on the road for a while. But just, Andy, as someone who has been a coach in this league for a long time, who knows the intricacies, a lot of people are saying this is a much better league. Give us your evaluation of where the SEC is right now.
Well, we actually have to go to Starkville, our in-state rival, on Thursday. We've got another Thursday-Saturday turn. So that will be very difficult, as it always is, in their building on Thursday night. I think overall, Paul, this is my 9th year in the league. It's hard for me to believe that. I remember the days when I had a mohawk and you were writing for the Birmingham Post-Herald. I can still remember those days. But top to bottom, I think the league is better than it's ever been. Obviously, when you talk about Kentucky, they're the perennial favorite to go back and win a national championship. But I think the bottom of the league has gotten much better, and the middle is as strong as it's ever been. I think if the tournament was today, if the tournament selection was today, which I wish it was because we would be in it. They're projecting 6 teams from our league, and that's a first for us for quite some time. Speaking as a league, I just think there's a lot of good coaches. There's a quality of player in the league that I think has certainly elevated SEC basketball.
As you mentioned, you're at Mississippi State, then Tennessee and Georgia at home before you hit the road again. I am curious, though, and I know that you hate to bite the hand that feeds you, so to speak, because television is good, and you can't get enough of it right now with all the different platforms, including the SEC network. But how difficult is it? I mean, there are a lot of Tuesday night games this year, and there are a lot of Thursday, Saturday swings. What type of hardship does that cause, or is it just simply something you have to deal with in a big-time league?
Well, I just think it's part of it, and as a league, we're so excited to be a part of the SEC network and having the opportunity to expose our brand nationally. I think it's already helped in a number of fronts. The downside is obviously on the back end you have very limited preparation. We go Thursday in Starkville. We'll travel back, quick turn to host Tennessee and their style of play for the first time. We've seen Tennessee all year on Saturday, which obviously will be difficult. But the upside is we have an extra day of preparation on the front end. So we just kind of take them as they come. Everybody has to deal with it. So it's a pretty equitable playing field.
Early in the season, Ole Miss stunned a lot of people, and I'll never forget watching social networking, and people were flipping channels left and right when Ole Miss took Kentucky into overtime. I always hate to ask a coach about someone else, but you can't get away from Kentucky right now. Andy, you understand big-time basketball. You've coached at very high levels, including what you're doing right now. You've played at high levels. Compare Kentucky to the rest of mankind, I guess, is in a pedestrian question.
Well, I think it seems like, our adventure into Rupp for the SEC opener was a lifetime ago, but I think all the hype is worthwhile as it relates to Kentucky and, trying to go through the mythical undefeated season. Defensively, Paul, they're so good. I think that's what gives them a legitimate chance to run the table. Their length, their athleticism, their versatility, their depth, the position that Cal puts them in, and to have them play so unselfishly and really buy into the defensive side of the ball, I think is what gives them a chance to be special. And I do think they're underrated offensively. They've grown, as we all have throughout the course of the season, to understand roles, to play with one another. Their perimeter shooting has been doubted throughout the course of the year, but I think statistically, if you look at it, I think it's a bit of a misnomer. I think they've got guys that knock down shots, led by Devin Booker, a guy who was in our state, who's really a tremendous catch-and-shoot jump shooter, and their ability to clean things up off the offensive glass. I don't really see any weaknesses. Obviously, in our sport, it's not a best of seven. It's one game, one night, so really you just got to be the better team for about 3 hours, which makes it so intriguing as we approach March Madness.
Let's talk about that, because a couple of years ago, your team got hot late, got a ticket to the tournament, and as you said, this year looking very good, although the last couple of weeks of the season can be a mountain to climb. Arkansas was in the tournament last year and then let it slip away. It happens to everyone. What's it like to be in your position right now and then to have to hold on, because it is not an easy trek to the middle of March?
No question. I've been on both sides of it. 2 years ago, as you alluded to, we were going to Starkville. If the tournament was that day we were in, we didn't play well. Our in-state rivals upset us. I was dead man walking for the umpteenth time. My guys rallied. We came back and on senior night beat a good Alabama team. We then go to Baton Rouge and maybe played our best game of the year and beat the Tigers in Baton Rouge to finish second in the regular season, made a magical run to the conference tournament finals. I was still walking around, I'll never forget it, in Bridgestone Arena looking for somebody to tell me, hey, we've done enough, you're in. But as I would approach anybody with a voice, they would turn and go the other way. So I said, hey, we better finish this thing. We were able to upset the Billy Donovan coach Florida Gators in a magical run for us to get to the tournament, beat Wisconsin. First time I think Bo Ryan had been beaten in the first round in quite some time, and we're a basket away from advancing to the Sweet 16. So I say all that to say I preach to my team, as I will here in about 30 minutes, live in the moment. Let's stay involved in the process, and one game at a time. I know people don't want to hear Coach speak, but that's really the world we have to live in.
Andy, let me ask you about that, because everyone goes through it at some point. Well, most everyone goes through it. Some in the early part of their career, then they head for the Hall of Fame. But you've experienced it. Others right now in the SEC are on the hot seat. Fans, all they know is the tournament, and that's understandable. But how do you deal with that? Because it can't be easy on you, your family, nor can it be easy on your assistant coaches and your team.
I try not to run from it, Paul, because there's so much. You're inundated with it constantly. Really, as you hit about mid-January, there's all this bubble talk, and there's all this guy's in trouble or that guy's in trouble. And I've certainly been involved in those conversations a number of times. We really just focus on the things that we can control, and we do talk about the process of just staying the course, because there's so much that can change within the course of a week. You can go from hot to not just like that. So we really just try to focus on the here and the now. Let's get ready for the next game. Let's approach it with our heads down, grinding through it. And then in March, let's look up, and hopefully we'll like our view.
I would like to ask you a broader question, because I saw you when we were there in October, and you participate, and you have to embrace whatever is going on your campus. And this was a pretty magical year for Ole Miss in terms of football. How do you, as the basketball coach, having been there nearly a decade, use football to your advantage?
Well, I think anything that shows Ole Miss in a good light, it makes the brand stronger, and everyone benefits. What Hugh's been able to do by winning on such a national stage. And obviously the Southeastern Conference, as it relates to college football, is second to none. And all of that benefits the brand, which is Ole Miss. We're all on the same team. We all have to do our part. And I think it has been a magical year. You know, Mike Bianco, our baseball coach, took our baseball team, which is nationally relevant every year, to the College World Series. And then Hugh had us in a conversation. Unfortunately, you know, we had that one of the most remarkable football plays I've ever seen. I grew up a huge football fan, but the Laquan Treadwell injury as he was crossing the goal line against Auburn changed the fate of our football program. All of those things, again, have continued to make our brand strong and to shine a positive light on a great university.
Andy Kennedy, the head coach at Ole Miss, trying to make another run toward March and certainly looking good right now. Andy, thanks for the time. I know you have practice to get to and games to get ready for, but we always appreciate visiting.
Thank you, Paul.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Ed Aschoff joins us. And, Ed, thanks for the time. What was it like spending Valentine's morning in Auburn watching two trees find new life?
Well, you would have thought that Auburn's football team was coming back from a championship win. People were cheering and chanting. It was probably 30 degrees out there before 10 a.m., and Toomer's Corner was just absolutely packed. I mean, it was 5 deep in some spots around the barricade of the planting site. But it really was fun to see and fun to witness these people take two trees so seriously because it's really part of their tradition. And so many of the Auburn fans that I talked to said that it felt like family members were coming home. To see those trees come in and people just starting to cheer. And I looked over and I thought, oh, it's Gus Malzahn walking in. No, it's a flatbed with a big oak tree on it. And most of the fans stayed until 1 o'clock when the final tree was planted and obviously walked around and admired them. But it was pretty cool. I mean, I grew up in Oxford, and going to the Grove is a huge tradition. But to see how happy these fans were, to see two new members of the family kind of come home was pretty special.
No, Ed, as someone who lived that story and watched it on a daily basis for a considerable period of time, it's difficult to explain. I mean, if you'd shown up from Mars or even from Montana and tried to understand it, but as you said, to Auburn people, to the Auburn family, these trees hold great symbolic meaning, just in terms of what had happened 4 years ago, the crime committed by Harvey Updike. What's the read on Updike these days in Auburn? I know he's no longer in jail; he's in Louisiana, but how is he being remembered?
They were more trying to forget him than anything else, and every fan that I talked to, I always mentioned, so do you forgive Harvey Updike? And none of them said that they did. But most of them were saying, you know what, we're just forgetting what he did and we're celebrating the moment. One fan in particular told me that he wished that they had put Harvey in one of the holes and then planted a tree on top of him. Clearly they didn't do that, but you could tell that they wanted to push him away. They didn't want any thought of him ruining their day. One fan said that she thought that if he had the chance, he would do it to these trees too. I know that he's been remorseful. But you could just tell that they don't even care about him anymore. They have what they want now. They're ready for this tradition to go back up. They'll be, showering the trees with toilet paper in 2016. And he's a distant memory. I think once Auburn gets that money back that he still owes them, they'll completely forget about him. But Saturday was not even closely about Harvey Updike to these guys unless they were asked about it.
Yeah, let me try to answer a couple of questions you brought up. First of all, in getting the money back from Harvey Updike, not going to happen. And secondly, I don't speak for him, but I do know him, and I did see him in jail and maintained a relationship with him for some time. As you know, he's not remorseful. He doesn't. I mean, it was his 15 minutes of fame. And he's never letting it go. Harvey Updike would do it all over again because that's who he is.
Yeah, and I honestly think that's how Auburn fans view him. One of the ladies out there, when I brought his name up, she snickered. And she looked at me and she was like, if he were here, no one would be handing him a Valentine, and I bet that he would try to go at one of those trees. And So that kind of demon image of him is slowly fading because those trees are coming back. But, yeah, he'll never be welcome there. And somebody will say, you know what, let's go to Toomer's and I'll get you some lemonade.
Talking with Ed Aschoff, Ed, let me ask you about Auburn in general, because it was a rough ending to the season, a 5-loss season, blowing the lead against Alabama, losing the game against Wisconsin, but it just doesn't seem like any of that matters. Auburn hired Will Muschamp, had a pretty amazing recruiting season. The expectations are extremely high. Talk a little bit about how Auburn was able to look past last season and turn all eyes toward this one.
You know, I think it's funny when a team loses a quarterback who started for 2 seasons, you usually think, oh, man, they're going to take a step back. But it seems like that offense might be even better with Jeremy Johnson, because I think they're going to have more of a passing threat. And we all know Gus Malzahn loves to use the run to get the pass going. I think he might almost be able to do the opposite this season because of how polished a thrower Johnson has been. He's not the runner that Nick Marshall was, obviously, but he can make some plays with his legs, and they have enough coming back from the offensive line that maybe he won't have to do that as much. But when you have so many good running backs still, Rock Thomas, I think, is a guy who could really jump up in the ranks of the SEC running backs. They're not going to have a problem running it. I think now they're going to be more dangerous throwing as Duke Williams comes back. They have some good young guys returning, and that's going to certainly help them on that side. Defensively, when you put a guy in like Will Muschamp, who I know that he wasn't the best head coach that Florida's ever had, but defensively they did not drop off. They were one of the best units in the entire country every year he was there. There was a little fall off last year because of the younger secondary, but he gets Carl Austin back, who I think could be one of the best pass rushers. And Byron Coward, I know he's a freshman, but he's kind of that Dante Fowler type player that Muschamp had at Florida, who I think he's going to work in as kind of a hybrid at linebacker and defensive end. And you know he's been successful at that position. So I like what their defense can do talent-wise and Will Muschamp-wise. It's all about can they come together and really gel. And I think that's going to be the difference for them. But I picked them to win the SEC right after the season, and I picked them to go to the Final Four. And I remember last year I came on your show and said Alabama would win the SEC. So my early predictions with you have worked out one year. I'm batting 1,000 right now.
Yeah, no, you're on a roll, and we're going to pay. I just placed a bet in Vegas on what you said, Ed. If Auburn wins, what happens to Alabama?
I think that Alabama is going to be fine in the long run, and they could even bounce back this season and win it all because they have Nick Saban. I think really you're going to start seeing a trend in recruiting because since Gus Malzahn's been there, they've had a top 10 class, and you don't really see that with competing rivals when they have a new coach. And I know that Malzahn knew Auburn and everybody kind of knew him, but I think that's kind of the trend. The athletes are starting to go more to Auburn, especially on the offensive side. I wonder if Auburn were to do what I'm predicting, how recruits would kind of perceive Alabama. They won the recruiting title this year, so there wasn't really that much of a drop-off. But I do think that a lot of recruits, outside of the state of Alabama are starting to look at Auburn more. And that's where I think you're going to see a difference. As long as Nick Saban's there, Alabama's not going to fall out of the top 3 of the SEC West. That's just not going to happen. But Auburn, even without a Nick Saban-type coach, Gus Malzahn's way different, and that philosophy is working. I think that as long as he's there, Auburn's going to be at the top of the SEC with Alabama, with the Georgias and stuff like that. So I'm not saying it's dark times in Alabama, far from it, but they can't just look at Auburn as the little brother. I mean, Auburn is making a strong push with Malzahn.
Well, Auburn has played in 2 national championship games since 2010. A lot of us, I'm with you. We act like Auburn just showed up. They've been at the party. They haven't stayed at the party. That's been the issue. They get there, and then they get sent home for a year or 2. On the East, did you tip your hand when you mentioned Georgia?
I think I did, and, I've been wrong about the East ever since I started at ESPN. I've yet to get the East champion right. So Georgia fans are probably going to hate me that I'm picking Georgia this early. I'm going to ride through it. I think that offensively, obviously, what are they going to do at quarterback to have to figure that out? But when you have Nick Chubb, you have 4 starters from the offensive line coming back, and I think a really solid receiving core starting with Justin Scott Wesley and Malcolm Mitchell, they're going to be fine. I mean, if Brian Schottenheimer can't learn to just hand the ball off to Nick Chubb, then he's in the wrong profession. Defensively, they have so much coming back as well. We saw a huge uptick in what they could do under Jeremy Pruitt last year. I think that defensive line is certainly kind of an issue right now. Only five scholarship players coming back, but they loaded up in this recruiting class up front. I like what they can do. I like their schedule. They have to get out of their own way. That's been Georgia's problem under Mark Richt. They haven't won a national championship. They haven't even competed for a national championship since he's been there. I honestly think that this is a year where fans are going to have the right to say, you know what, if we don't make it to Atlanta, if we don't make it to the playoffs, maybe we start looking in another direction. And I think Mark Richt's been an excellent coach there, but the fans are going to have a legitimate gripe if this team doesn't get out of its own way this year.
A lot of conversation started here from Ed Aschoff. We thought we would talk about trees. Instead, we may end up talking about predictions of Auburn going to the Final Four, and Georgia may be looking for a new coach. I know I'm exaggerating here if they can't have a big season, but I get what you're saying. Georgia fans like Mark Richt, but the patience. Speaking of patience, though, what will LSU fans be saying at the end of this year if they look if they're looking at 8-4 again or worse under Les Miles?
I think it's kind of the same situation, but for them, you know, there's going to be a lot of frustration with what's going on at quarterback. You know, I think what Zach Mettenberger did his last season was, you know, incredibly impressive, but there was such a big drop-off, and you really don't know what to expect from Anthony Jennings or Brandon Harris if he can get on the field this year. So that's the biggest question mark for me. I think that they bring enough talent back that they should be able to compete for that West, but without a really solid player at quarterback, I just don't know if they can. And you wonder, are they going to be battling it out at the bottom of the SEC West? Because we know how strong that division's going to be. Like Mark Richt, I don't think that either Les Miles or Mark Richt should be on the hot seat whatsoever, but fans will have a legitimate gripe if LSU isn't more competitive this year, and they lost a lot still. When you're at a program like LSU, you should always be competing for an SEC title, and I just don't think they will this year if they can't figure out their quarterback position. So I think you're going to see a lot of upset LSU fans if they win 8 games, if they win 7, if they even win 9 games and don't make it to the SEC title game.
Ed Aschoff, great stuff as always. Many thanks, Ed.
Yeah, no problem.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
President's Day. Lincoln, Washington combo. Lincoln last week, Washington coming up this week. We are here celebrating it with you. Are there enough holidays to start the year off? You get New Year's Day. Of course, that wasn't a good day in Alabama. Then you get Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which, we dealt with. But what do you do on President's Day? I mean, we can start waxing poetic at Guest On talking about Lincoln and Washington?
Well, I mean, maybe a group of important people that shaped the history of the world. No big deal or anything like that.
They were fairly important guys.
I don't know, but I'll tell you what, you don't realize how many holidays there are on the calendar until you find yourself working on every single holiday throughout the year. Although we're happy to inform and entertain the masses who are hanging out in their living rooms this afternoon.
No. And this is it's a snow day, too. I mean, a great deal of our conference that we talk about and love so much is shut down. The Northeast, has it ever opened? And it doesn't seem you kind of start thinking as you when you're in the South, not in the North, when you get to mid-February, you start to think, you might get a 75-degree day. You might get a nice turn. It's gone in the reverse this year. We had a pretty decent winter, and it's just gone haywire here in the last couple of days. Let's continue with more calls and check out Fred in Arkansas. Good afternoon, Fred.
Yes, Paul, thank you for calling me.
Thank you.
I just want to let everybody know that the Arkansas Razorbacks will be the first team to beat Kentucky this year. It will be February 28th at Lexington because our defense is awesome.
Well, I think that's a possibility, Fred. And by the way, I hate to, short sell our friends in South Alabama and in New Orleans, but they're already shut down today and tomorrow because of Mardi Gras. I don't know why we act like people are even bothering to work. If you have ever been in New Orleans or Mobile, Alabama on the Tuesday or Wednesday of this week, forget about it. Even today, the entire city shuts down. Good time to be there, by the way.
Yeah, sounds fun. Why don't we do a remote from Bourbon Street next year? Can we pull that off somehow?
I think we can. I don't think that would be difficult at all. Know some people down there. Winston is in Kentucky. Winston, good afternoon.
Hello, Paul. Proud Big Blue Nation here. Fred's wrong about that. We're going to smoke them in Rupp Arena. But what I was going to talk about is I think there will be a lot of upsets, but they're going to be in the NCAA tournament. And we got a foot of snow up here.
You got a lot of snow in Kentucky?
Yes. Like I said, the question, the teams I look at is LSU will upset. Coming in is probably a 7 or maybe 11. They'll upset a lot of teams in there. Mississippi State will upset, and Arkansas will upset a lot of teams, but they won't beat us in Kentucky.
No, I don't see Kentucky losing at Rupp. I don't think there's much chance of that. I think Kentucky had a close call against Ole Miss. I don't see it happening again.
Yeah, we have too many weapons for them up there. They're a good team. I give that to Arkansas, but we go pretty deep, especially in the guards and in the front post positions.
No doubt. Well, listen, Winston, be safe up there. Let's go from Kentucky to Alabama, the southern, central to western part of the state, southeastern part of the state, excuse me. Southeast, real town, Alabama. Charles, let me ask you a question, Charles.
What?
How was Valentine's night?
It was fine. I'll stay here right by myself. I didn't have no date, didn't want one. And then you and John done all best. You said get me a date. Y'all don't want to get me a date. I don't want one anyway. Let me ask you something, Finebaum. What'd you do? Did you have a date?
No.
Oh, why not? You married. You're supposed to have a date.
I went to the mall and kind of hung out at the food court.
By yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, you trying to pick somebody up, huh? What was Linda at? Working? Doing surgery?
No, she left me.
I don't blame her. I'd leave your butt too.
Yeah, she saw Friday's show and she saw me flirting with all those women from Alabama, and she said, "That's it."
That's all right, Paul. She'll like me. Once she sees me, she'll fall for me. You ain't got nothing to worry about. I'll take care of her.
Yeah, I can see my wife falling for you.
She would. I know it. Everybody does. You know what, Paul?
Charles, slow down, okay?
What?
We saw you humiliated on national television on Friday, okay?
I'm fixing to humiliate you. I tell you one thing, Paul Finebaum. You better watch yourself, because that brown nose and John P. Hayes, he's going brown nose. I can already see the brown stain on his nose already, and it's going to take 2 years to get that off. But he's going to keep on brown nosing till he gets your job. And you know where you're going to wind up, Finebaum? You're going to wind up at the circus. You know what you're going to be? They're going to build you as a human pencil. That's what they're going to make out of you, the human pencil. And John P., I tell you one thing, you better hurry up and find you a woman and get married, because your features are changing every day. You get more and more like Joe Paterno. And you know Joe Paterno ain't no Charles in real time. My advice to you is to hurry up and find a woman. You hear me? Stud muffin my butt. You ain't no stud muffin. You ain't nothing but a muffin. You better get rid of him, Paul. Fine. You're going to wind up at a circus. You're going to wind up as the human pencil. Ha, ha, ha.
Oh, there's the one guy that I've been waiting to get my love advice from.
Yeah, a guy that hasn't had a date in 5 years, we think, maybe longer. Let's continue. And David is in El Dorado, Arkansas. Hey, David.
Hey, Paul. How you doing this afternoon?
Okay, thank you.
I just got a question before you turn into a human pretzel. That's either disturbing trend.
Is it pretzel or pencil?
I think it was a pencil.
I think. Oh, was it a pencil?
Yeah, a human number 2 pencil.
I can't understand him. I can't understand
like
him anyway. They talk different way down there. But I see a trend coming out of Fayetteville. I don't know if it's disturbing to you or not, but coaches leaving this year. We've had 3 coaches leave the program. Two of them after they just signed a contract. You know,
Let me ask you, do you think there's a personality conflict with Bielema?
Maybe with Chaney, but
okay.
Shannon, I think he just left to get back to Florida. You know, 'cause, you know, he was at Miami for all those years. But Thomas, running backs coach, I didn't understand that since we've got such a big stable of running backs coming back this year. I didn't understand that, and I just want to get your thoughts on what you think.
Well, listen, I would give you an opinion if I had a strong one. I don't. I'll defer to some people maybe closer, but I know one thing about that program. It's getting better, and it's getting better fast. And sometimes, David, when programs start to take giant leaps, you get a little bit edgy. Maybe the coach is demanding. Maybe his coordinators are demanding. I realize he just has a new coordinator. So, I mean, I can't explain it, but I can explain one thing. That program is on fire right now. It may not look like it in terms of the overall record, but they had an assault toward the end, and I was impressed with it. And Bielema had patience. He's been building it for 2 years, and it's finally taking hold. I do appreciate your call, though. Tobias is in snowy Nashville, which was pretty well shut down today. Tobias, good afternoon. Apparently the phone system was shut down there, too. Tobias, you there? Apparently not. Let's check in with Hayden in Columbia, Missouri, which also had a lot of bad weather. Hey, Hayden.
Hey, what's up, Paul?
Doing great.
I'm a first-time caller. I wanted to hear your opinion about football and the SEC, and how the 12 SEC teams were in the top 25 for recruiting this year. Alabama been ranked first for like the 5th straight year. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that is impressive. It's also business as usual, and I don't mean to be dismissive of it, but I think we saw a couple of new teams at the party, and Mizzou being one of them. But that's really when you get into this conversation in late December and early January about which league is best, in Ohio State or Wisconsin or someone else wins a big bowl game, and then the crowd from the Big Ten network starts beating their chests and talking about how great the Big Ten is, they forget it's all about recruiting. Yes, on a given day, teams can win. We saw that, and good. I mean, good for Ohio State. Very impressive performance, but at the end of the day, no one can compete with the SEC in recruiting, and that's why I believe the SEC is built for the future, and why it will still be relevant in terms of the national championship race every single year.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Let's continue and check in with Al, who is in Birmingham right now.
Paul, the first Alabama basketball game I attended was versus Virginia Tech at the NIT in the spring of '73 at Madison Square Gardens. And I've been a season ticket holder since '87, and I'll have to admit that basketball has become rather stagnant the last couple of years. But Paul, I want to ask you a question, and you just had him on. Why does a guy like Andy Kennedy get a pass in this league, and a guy like Anthony Grant takes constant criticism? And they have basically the same record. I mean, Andy's been there 3 years longer, but he's only been to one NCAA, and that was 2 years ago. Because Grant has one NCAA, and the rest are NITs, along with Andy Kennedy, who also has a number of NITs. So I wonder why the difference.
Well, I'll tell you why I think it is, and Kennedy alluded to it, Al. I mean, he was about to get fired.
I think you're right. I think
And when you get to the tournament, and then suddenly it looks like he's got it turned around a little bit, and that's all it needs. I mean, Conzo Martin last year was not held in high regard. He takes Tennessee to within a play or two of the Elite Eight. Next thing you know, he's looking good. Of course, he leaves. But I think in Grant's case, it's a little bit more than just the bottom line on the court. I think it's the personality. When you talk to him one-on-one, Al, he's a very nice person.
Man. Yeah.
He's just not much of someone in front of a camera, and that hurts him.
And as I said, I don't think I would ever advocate for a change for any coach, but I think it has become stagnant, and maybe a change is in order. Paul, have you addressed the $47 million discrepancy between the University of Alabama and Auburn University and their athletic program, almost $14 million deficit at Auburn and a $33 million surplus at Alabama. Have you addressed that yet?
Yeah, I don't understand that. I saw that article earlier, and, I mean, I realize Auburn is paying off Tony Barbary. I realize they're probably still paying off Tuberville and Gene Chizik. I'm assuming that some of it comes from that. The rest of it,
that much?
No, not that much.
That's an amazing. That's almost $50 million separates the two institutions in their earning capacity. So, hey, Paul, as always, upstairs a band was playing and the singer was singing something about going home. Paul, you have a good day.
Al, who always ends, for those of you who don't know, and I assume that's many, with a Springsteen lyric. No, I don't know. I also would assume that those numbers are a little bit behind. And let's be honest. I mean, Alabama under Nick Saban has been a cash cow. Auburn has had 3 coaches since Saban arrived. They've had Tuberville, Chizik, and now Gus Malzahn. And 2 of those they had to pay off huge sums of money. Jumbo is also in the state of Alabama. Hey, Jumbo.
Hey, Paul, thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Hey, listen, I want to comment on Anthony Grant. I've never liked this guy. He's had one signature win, and that was against Duke. But let me throw something at you and give you a few stats. Rick Stanberry, Mississippi State, 1998 to 2012, went to NCAA tournament 6 times. He had a 293 win record, 165 losses. Now, would this guy not be a good fit for us?
Well, listen, I don't know everything there is. I mean, I know Stansbury has done a good job. I keep hearing his name mentioned. He did take State to a Final Four and very consistent success. Is that the answer? Do you bring someone in who hasn't been hired? I mean, my only question about coaches who have been out of the business for a long time, and I know I hate to be so pedestrian when I ask this, because it's not my job to conduct investigations and due diligence on coaches, but why has no one else hired him?
That's a good question, but who are we going to hire? I mean, right now, I think he'd be the best guy. He's at Texas A&M, but I think he'd be a better fit than Anthony Grant, because Anthony Grant, as long as he's coach, I'm not going to attend an Alabama basketball game. That's the bottom line.
Jumbo, I wish I could get paid $100 every time someone asked me whether Grant is going to be there next year. I'd be a multimillionaire right now. I mean, let me ask you, if I said to you, Jumbo, you're in charge of conducting a search, do you think you could find a coach better than Rick Stansbury? I think you could.
Yes, sir. I believe I could. I'd have to do my research, of course, but as of right now,
let me throw a couple of names at you. Let me throw one name at you in particular. Do you think Greg Marshall is a good coach? He's at Wichita State.
Yes, sir. I think he'd be a good coach, too, but I don't know much about this Marshall guy because, of course, he's over in another conference. I watch a lot of SEC and
he only
ACC
went undefeated last year. He's got a program that has had some success, but, I mean, he right now is the hot coach in the country from what I hear.
Well, if we could get him, I'd give him a shot. I mean, right now anybody'd be better than Anthony Grant. I mean, I'll take Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about Mickey Mouse versus Anthony Grant. But can I get back to you on that?
Yes, sir. Thanks, Paul.
Alabama fans. I was on our station in Birmingham today, and that's the first question. And they are unrelenting on Anthony Grant. He is just a very unpopular person for someone who is pretty popular.
Well, here's the thing. We put them on the watch. You go Saturday, you have a game at home, right? You go into halftime, it's a ball game against Vanderbilt. You got to win that game at home. And what do? You give up 44 points in the second half to Vanderbilt on your home floor. When you're coaching for not only your job, but for perceptionally the future, your own future.
Now, they've had injuries and losses, but this is also a club that's won against A&M and at Tennessee. I mean, they're capable.
44 points in a half of college basketball in this day and age is like putting up 60.
Well,
you can barely get to 35 half the time on the scoreboard.
Well, I mean, listen, you heard this conversation last March. I mean, that's what, people say, why aren't you more animated about it? Well, I gave an opinion last March, what I would have done had I been the athletic director, and that would have been to fire the coach. So what am I supposed to say this year? I think he should be retained. I'm not. It's out of our hands. I will say that the people that run the University of Alabama are very smart people. We just got through talking about the surplus there. Last year it came down to money. I don't think Bill Battle wanted to pay $4 to $6 million or whatever the buyout was and start over. This year, can he afford, if Alabama misses the tournament, and right now no one has Alabama in the tournament.
No. It's going to take a finals appearance in the SEC tournament and a close game against Kentucky.
Yeah. And beyond that, so if Alabama – if Alabama gets in the tournament, then that's a totally different conversation. I don't even know how to react to that. But if they don't get in, then is he going to say, well, we really feel like the program has gotten better? Hard for Bill Battle, a smart man, to make that statement. We will continue with more of your calls. And Dominic is in Memphis. Hey, Dominic.
How you doing, Paul?
Okay, good to hear from you.
Yes, sir. I was wondering, do you remember Christian Brothers High School in Memphis?
Do I remember it?
Attended there,
yeah,
sophomore year.
It's been a couple of years, but yeah, I definitely showed up there a couple of times.
Yes, sir. We lost two fellow brothers this past weekend in a car wreck. Tom Kilgore and Christopher.
Oh my goodness.
Kesterson. I was wondering if you could say maybe a prayer for them tonight.
Yeah, no, I will. Well, listen, those were two great years in my life, and one thing that I, Dominic, appreciated about that, the relationship between those brothers, many of whom would come by our house, have dinner with us, watch games with us. I'm glad you mentioned that. I didn't know that, and I haven't been back to the school in a while, but that is a sad story, and a special place in my heart for that school, and particularly for these fine gentlemen.
Yes, sir. I called today to talk to you about the Arkansas-Kentucky game coming up February 28th. Arkansas's won 4 straight, 7 of their last 8. What do you think is going to be like the top 3 keys for Razorbacks to pull off that victory?
Thanks for the call, Dominic. Is that game in where is that game?
It's in Rupp. And by the way, Coach Anderson will be on the program tomorrow, so it'll be a good question to ask him.
We'll ask him that. I'm gonna remember we were at in Bud Walton the day of the first practice and had a good chance to catch up with him and saw him again when he was here for SEC Media Days. One thing I love about Arkansas fans, I mean, they are confident, man. I don't see it happening. I'll let the coach talk about his team in a little more detail than I'm capable of. It did happen last year twice. It's happened the year before, but man, sorry. Love to see the optimism of Razorback Nation, and I appreciate Dominic's call about the brothers from Christian Brothers High School in Memphis.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Finebaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN radio app.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.